Oh, they've done it! Simon Terodde, an instant hero! Can you believe it? Plenty attacking! No! The comeback is complete! A stunning second half from Schalke!
Blau und Weiß sein Leben lang. Herzlich willkommen zurück auf Schalke America. I'm your host, Richard Carmen. Welcome to another episode of Schalke America, episode 201. Joining me as always, co-host Jack Mangan. Jack, how are you doing?
Not great. Sitting at 16th in the table at the moment.
Yeah, in a relegation spot. Ugh.
Yeah, not a victory Monday, and not a particularly happy Monday either. Weird game. Looking forward to kind of talking to you about it. I think if you look at the score line and maybe just the first half, you have kind of one impression. Second half was a little bit of a different story, and I think some of the goals that were scored overall are a little bit maybe the score line paints a harsher picture, but lots of things going on in camp off the field as well, right? With lots of leaks and things coming out in terms of attitudes of the players. Not a good situation for Schalke at the moment, at the bottom of the table, and it seems like a pretty fractured group at the moment.
It does. As you mentioned, we are sitting in a relegation spot at the moment. Things do not seem to be wonderful in Gelsenkirchen. But yeah, coming off the last game, though we won 4-3 against Magdeburg, gave up 3 goals. This game gave up 3 goals. Like you said, the goals and when it came, it could alter how it made it look worse than it was, or did it, right? And I think, and I'll get into one of the areas of strength I thought during the season or the beginning of the season is now a weakness for me. Not the weakness, the defense is the weakness for sure, but we'll get into that. But yeah, I lost 3-1 to St. Pauli. Goals from Marcel Hartl, FIFA player, if you know from your Union Berlin days, scored a penalty in the 21st minute, 57th minute as well, with a consolation goals by Bukalfa in the 92nd minute. Sebastian Polter did get a consolation in the 29th minute. Looking at the lineups for these two teams, there were some danger men, to look at for St. Pauli, the home team. By the way, the home crowd for St. Pauli was fantastic with the flares and jumping around and singing. Nordkurve was as well very lively in this one. We'll get into the lineups. Vasily in goal with Val, Smith, and Metz in the back. A midfield 5 of Saliakis, Metcalf, Hartl, Aritzka with Afolayan, Eggestein, and Saad in the top. For me, the two guys, obviously, Eggestein is a guy who terrorizes Schalke. It seems like no matter who he plays for or when he plays, what league it is, he seems to do the job against Schalke. Though this game is a little quiet, kind of. And Hartl is a guy who who I had a lot of pay attention to, just because one, I know about him mostly from FIFA. But he is a player who is pretty decent. I mean, going into this game, those are two guys that you were looking at. Was anybody else that's jumping out at you? What were your thoughts on this St. Pauli lineup?
I mean, yeah, in terms of the names, before the game, I would agree with you. I think, obviously Hartl scored a couple goals and looked great. I thought Saad was dangerous at times as well. Didn't have the end product. Ultimately became close a couple times and was pretty dangerous up front. And I thought Metcalf centrally, and actually, the wing backs as well were effective at times too. So, decent performance overall from St. Pauli.
I would certainly agree with that. And then looking at our lineup with the injured Mueller, who, by the way, who picked up an injury, who's out for several months with an Achilles tendon or something or other. Fairman still not quite recovered yet. He is in training, but he isn't ready. He's in match fit. Michel Langer would get between the pipes in this one. You had Brunner, Baumgartel, Kaminski, and Oyan in the back. In the midfield, you had Schallenberg, Seguin, and Tempelman with Merkin and Kabadai with Polter up top. Thoughts on the lineup? Depends on how you look at it. It's a 4-4-2, 4-3-2-1. 4-3, whatever it is. It's fairly similar lineup that we've seen at least a couple weeks, I think.
Yeah, Poulter, obviously getting the run at the moment up top and looking decent. You got to say, I think overall, I think his work rate's been great as well. He was tracking back consistently this one on the defensive side of things to try to help out, and ultimately got his goal, which we'll talk about in a minute here. Kabadai is getting kind of a run recently. He seems to me to be industrious and, but mostly danger adjacent, just does not have the final product in the final third.
Adjacent, I love that.
You look like you think he's going to be more dangerous than he ultimately is. He just can't really hit, a barn door at the moment, but still, like I said, industrious and had a couple nice passes as well, setting up teammates for opportunities. And then, Merkin, since we brought him on recently, has looked pretty bright. I'm glad to see that he's continuing. And then at the back, it's pretty much what you would expect at this point in terms of the back four.
Another game off the substitute bench, we would see Kazuki, Kalash, Kiki Top, and Odraogo. Interesting how you don't see, obviously Odraogo's coming off the bench and Kiki Top as well, but no Tobias Moore, who did well in recent games. Henny Matriciani, a guy who's a cult hero at this point with Schalke. Don't see him, so you're curious about those. Obviously, the goalkeeper situation is a little suspect at the moment, but the way this game started off, obviously the game is in Hamburg. The crowd is lively, and from the beginning, honestly, it was all St. Pauli, I think, in this one. And I'm curious your thoughts on this. Eventually, it seemed to have wave after wave of attack in this one, and then ultimately, in the 20th minute or so, after 3 chances in a row, that Longer made 2 great saves. When it looked like 3 great saves, all of a sudden, people are crying for handball. They go to VAR. Initially, I didn't see it. I thought this was a bogus call. But then after, I don't know which replay it was, you saw Templeman with a clear handball at the top of the box, trying to cover his face. I get why he was doing that, but you're in the box. What are your thoughts on the whole play? And even the plays leading up to that, because, the first 20 minutes, I thought all St. Pauli, in my opinion.
I would agree. First half was not good at all. St. Pauli with the majority of the possession. We looked all over the place. Defensively, that kind of pinball action that you were talking about leading up to the penalty that Templeman gives away. That was one of, I think, 2 of those kind of situations in the first half where we just could not clear the ball for whatever reason. And somehow avoided them scoring. There was another one of those in the second half. We had just some moments where we just, look completely inept. Part of that maybe he's Longer not commanding his area as much as he should in this one, but he's third string at this point, so I'm not criticizing him, and I thought he did reasonably well. All things considered, made a big save in the second half at one point too. But Templeman, you can make the argument he's trying to cover his face. I understand that. I think his arms were still fairly far away in terms of disrupting a shot. But it's an unfortunate goal for Schalke to concede in that moment because, like you said, it comes off of a shot from distance that just gets blocked. And the thing that you and I were talking about coming into this match on the last pod was that, St. Pauli's high up in the table, but they've done it with sort of these not particularly exciting games, a lot of low scoring, not conceding a lot of goals, but not scoring a lot of goals, minimal action. And so naturally we start off the game by giving them a cheap penalty in the 20th minute to help their offense out and get them on. And I'm just like, of course that's what we would do. The total game script in terms of what we want to avoid. So that was very frustrating. And as the comments in the chat right now are saying, first 30 minutes were just as shit as against, Magdeburg. And you've heard, some players speak to that as well in terms of we have to sort out how we're starting these matches because we're just shooting ourselves in the foot, digging ourselves a hole. And then, we spend the rest of the time trying to, scramble to get back into things. And we make it more difficult when teams can bunker down against us after, grabbing an early lead.
Yeah, it's always bad when you try to give the opposition, you gift the opposition a penalty to start the game. St. Pauli didn't need it, right? We always say don't beat ourselves. St. Pauli had majority of the possession, majority of the attempts, the chances in the first 20, 30 minutes. We didn't have to give it to them, and we just gave away a penalty like that. And like I said, we both get why Templeman did what he did, but you got to be smarter about that. And he was pretty much out like this versus like this or something. I can see maybe the referee, I don't know, letting it go or something like that. But yeah, it was not a natural position or whatever you want to call it. And penalty's a penalty, and they get the lead up there right away. I like the response from Schalke, though it was a little bit delayed. Unpopular opinion, Jack. I think Sebastian Polter should be a starting striker. Not just because his work rate, what we've seen, Simon Tarota's had the same thing. They both can finish the ball. But I think that Polter brings differently is the ability to wrangle in the long passes, especially from the goalkeeper situation. there's rare
which
times.
is the only way we were trying to play in the second half. That's all we were doing essentially. But
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, and we rarely see Simon Tarota wrangle one of those long balls in or any long passes, and it seems Poulter does a very good job about that. It kind of springboards the play from there. But we would end up getting a goal in the nice play, really. So we started seeing pressure from Schalke, and eventually, Thomas Owion come down the left-hand flank, made a nice cross. He's been doing this pretty much all season long, and you had two players coming in the back door. You had Poulter in the front, the Kabadai in the back door, and at first you don't really see what happens, but what it is wonderful cross and wonderful redirection by Poulter to get the goal in, make it 1-1 at that point. And a fantastic play by him, fantastic play by Owion, really, and it's 1-1 at that point. I felt better. But how did you feel up to that goal, and just how in general what your thoughts are around that time?
I mean, first of all, just quickly, I agree with your take on Poulter and Terada there. I think that's something that we've talked about with Terada for a long time on the pod. Is you would think with his size he would be a little bit more effective on aerial duels, and actually some of that hold up play in the long ball situation. And I do think Poulter is much more effective in that sense. He's still frustrating at times where there's moments where he look like he's in good opportunities and just like somehow gets eaten up by the defense or squandered. But at least I do think he's better there. I mean. Owion, I mean, like I think I tweeted out at that point something like thank God, like somebody with a little bit of quality at that point, because it had been so just brutal on the offensive end with like
I don't think we had anything up to that point.
It was bad. And then it was actually funny because that play actually starts off on a pretty promising break for Schalke, and then Tempelman like plays a ball behind Merkin, I think, that totally kills the momentum of it. And ultimately, it's like Owion plays a ball into Merkin, who kind of kicks it forward, and it's not. St. Pauli defender should probably be able to get to it, but to Ovion's credit, he runs after it, even though he shouldn't really have a chance at winning that, and kind of takes the guy by surprise, gets around it, gets his head up, and plays a ball, a good ball in with a little bit of pace and whip into a dangerous area. Was he going for Poulter? Was he going for Kabadai? I don't really care. He got it into an area where both of them were sort of in play, and Poulter, just gets a little deft foot on it, redirects it, and it's a really nice goal. And we needed that, like you said, for the response and everything, and like. Yeah, Owion, whatever there were times on the pitch last year, he looked like he was about to cry. You know what I mean? I don't know what was going on in his personal life or with his psychology, but like he was just a shell of the person that we saw in the second division previously. And this season looks much more like himself, playing with confidence. He's also taking shots from distance when he's playing like that. I really like that. I mean, it's not just his delivery, because every once in a while, I'm the kind of guy who's just like, somebody just get something on frame and see if you can get a deflection or like create some chaos in the box. And like, I like a guy that can actually get some shots on target. Because the shots are pretty accurate from distance too. They usually do get on frame or get deflected. It's not like he's just like, skying stuff over the top of the bar like Kabadai is. But anyway, good goal, good response. Nice to see, Poulter getting goal return. So.
Yeah, and up to that goal, we were a shell of ourselves. We were just getting shellacked, with the offensive chances by St. Pauli, and to the chat's credit, it's like, the first 3 minutes was a shit show. It was not good at all. What I noticed, we kind of righted ourselves after that, and we kind of saw ourselves out to halftime. I think Langer had to make 1 or 2 saves after that. St. Pauli did look a little dangerous there, but what I've liked, obviously, is Thomas Owion and Merkin on the left-hand side, because Merkin, I think, should be playing up top, up higher than he had been originally to start the season, and he's doing well. I think I agree with you. He's doing well up there, playing alongside Poulter, and Thomas Owion has that freedom to go up and down, and doesn't have to rely on him to be all the way up top, and Merkin can help him out a little bit. The defense is what it is, right? We know that is a major weakness for the team at the moment, but a position. Area of the field that I thought was going to be a strength because there was depth. It seemed like there was depth. Is the midfield. The midfield seems to be majorly a weakness at this point. It's not as bad as the defense, but it's pretty close. They can't hold on to the ball. And obviously the best player in our team, without a shadow of doubt, is Ouedraogo, the 17-year-old. When he's in there, we look more competent in the midfield. At least he can transition from defense to the attack. When he's not in there, you got Schallenberg, and I'm starting to lose faith in Tempelman now. I'll get on your camp now, right? And Seguin has.
It's more inconsistency from Tempelman, by the way. He has positive moments, and like I like his work rate and stuff. He's just like he's way too. He gives
offensively just turns the ball around for no reason. Like, well, what are you doing? But he defensively does well. So maybe he's like as a double pivot, he'd be good. But you know what? The role that he's in is not great. And Seguin, after his wonderful goal against Braunschweig, has kind of gone down ever since that play. And so the midfield is not holding on to the ball. We can't get the transition from the defense to the attack. And the attack, I think we're okay. I think when we have the ball going forward, whether it's Owayan, Merkin, Kabadai, Danger Adjacent, and Poulter, they can get goals. They can figure out goals. We just can't get the ball to them is the problem. And when our midfield isn't helping out the offense or defense, especially defensively, you see these runners come in. We talked about this on the last podcast, and Baumgartel talked about this after the game. Is like, we just can't do anything defensively, and nobody knows what to do. And all these chances go one after the other, especially a team who doesn't score many goals like St. Pauli. They look like Magdeburg all of a sudden when they can score 9 goals a game. It's a little infuriating, but we made it out of the first half at least.
Yeah. I mean, we could have been a lot worse. Like we said, there was some moments where it was pinballing and everything, and I was concerned that we were going to concede several. Was certainly on the cards. They would have been good for it. So fortunate to get out what we did.
Yeah, Ryan seems to agree. He says the midfield seems to be the biggest problem at the moment. Like, what's the defense supposed to do when our midfielders are giving the ball away for, exactly 80% of the time? There was a nice adjustment by Rice and company after the break. I think the second half we looked more competent. We had some really great opportunities early on. I thought it was a great couple plays where Poulter got set up free. He made some nice move around the defender to keep the ball, and then gets a shot off, forced the goalkeeper to make a great save. Later on, Merkin had a great opportunity that Kabadai skied the ball. He said could hit a barn door. I mean, all you got to do is like shoot it on target. It's going to go in. He couldn't even do that. Looked like DeSanto there in the shot. Sorry to bring that up, Jack. But
yeah,
it was better in the second half than the first half. I think, that you were kind of saying earlier. What did you see from the boys, as we came out of the gate in that second half?
No, yeah, second half I thought was much better. We were competing. We had the majority of the possession. The second half shots were way more even in terms of what we were able to get on frame and everything. It wasn't always the most creative in possession, but I think it was like effectively practical to some extent. But yeah, a little uninspired. But basically, a lot of our front line kind of playing right on the edge of the back line, and our center backs for whatever reason we're not getting pressed really that hard by the opposition, which allowed both Baumgartel and especially Kaminsky just kind of sit and kind of like play back and forth until they thought they had an opportunity to kind of play a through ball, a little like dink over the top. Is that efficient necessarily? Like, I don't know. I mean, like, you're going to give away the ball a lot of times, but Kaminsky's actually good at that. That's one of his strengths. And there were some opportunities. He played one over the top to Merkin in the second half where Merkin took like 3 really great touches in a row to beat a defender and set himself up. And then the last one just got away from him. Kabadai came in and missed the shot over the top, which probably should have been a goal there. So, I mean, like, look, we had opportunities in the second half for sure. We created opportunities where we should have scored. Poulter had opportunities. Kabadai had opportunities. We just couldn't finish it off. And then, I think ultimately one spot of bad kind of the man-to-man defense that we saw rear its head was actually Kaminsky, who kind of lost his guy. And then, the last goal is a deflected goal off of College. So I thought we actually, I thought we played much better. Thought the scoreline in the second half was, I think, a little bit flattering for St. Pauli ultimately. Yeah. And I like the substitutions. I said before the game when we were talking in the Discord, we have a fun bench at least in terms of the options, and we ended up seeing Kazuki, Oedraogo, and Keke Top, which I think like anybody who's like interested in the youth and sort of the some of the sparks and everything would have liked to see. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I think again, well, we kind of alluded to this earlier, but it seems like the direct play seemed to be the play of choice for Schalke. Not only the defenders, like you mentioned, but as well as Michel Langer. I mean, luckily for them, you had Poulter up top, who was corralling most of those plays. One of the goals, I think, kind of sparked all that. One of the goals, we only scored 1 goal. But the goal did get sparked by the long ball because it went to Poulter, and Poulter kind of corralled the ball, and then they kept possession. That's when the goal eventually happened from that. But we saw that a lot happen, and especially in the second half. And then I thought it started relying on it too much, right? It's good to do it every now and then, sprinkle it around, mix it in with some of your tactics, but they seem to do it way too often, it seemed like. And it's like, okay, you're shooting Hail Marys at this point. It's like, playing Super Nintendo or something like that. Jack, I know this before your time. I don't know if you know Super Nintendo. But no, I think it was great to see like Drago come to the bench, and Kozuki. I thought once even while we're getting these chances, quality chances in the second half, it still was bypassing that midfield. With the midfield, that was a problem. And I think it wasn't until we saw Drago come on the pitch And even Kazuki, even though he's more further up in his positioning, that's where we started seeing a good transition between the defense to the midfield. And I agree with one of the comments here and saying that, well, the games that we've seen Odrago like way up high, like we're in a Kazuki type position or a Merkin type position. Yes, he can create, but he doesn't do as much for the team as he does when he's in that midfield as a box to box, and he can really get the ball deep and then drive the ball and spread it out to whomever. You saw when he did that, Templeman had some opportunities as well. So we did look a little bit better at that point. But like I said, end of the game, that goal happened. I don't know if you caught it, but I caught it on the second replay of it where Thomas Oyan, when he throws the ball in, he pulls up because he pulls like his calf muscle and he couldn't walk. And then all of a sudden it's a turnover. It goes the other way. And really it's Kaminsky losing his man, like you said, and hitting off a Kalash. And that's just, it was a 92nd minute at that point. I thought we were doing, the score was flattering for St. Pauli to an extent. I do think that they were the better team overall in the 90. I thought, I deserved a win for sure, but I thought
agree, yeah.
they were much closer than what you saw.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall we were the better team in the second half. I think they were the better team by a wider margin in the first half, and obviously still created some danger from the second half regardless. The one thing I'll say about Ouedraogo real quick is, and you could disagree with this argument, I think at this point in his career, he is inherently a luxury player. And you're making that calculation and so that cost risk analysis, like when you decide to play him. Yeah. Like I don't want to make excuses for younger players in this sense. If you are, and then maybe he is being told to play higher up a lot of the times by Rice, whatever. But like, let's say he's drifting out of position or isn't really putting in the defensive work right. If you want to make that argument, I think the tactical awareness and you understanding where you are on the pitch and your responsibilities. I think that stuff inherently comes more and more with age. And that you tend to see those deficiencies from younger players anyway. I think the reason you're playing a 17-year-old in Ouedraogo is not for what he's bringing you in that. It's for what he's doing when he has the ball at his feet. And how he can link up with play and that kind of stuff. And so I think you're kind of, taking that, when you play him anyway. And I don't have an issue with that. I think he's worth it, especially when we're lacking the quality we're lacking in midfield in other areas of the pitch anyway. I think we need him at least in a cameo role like we saw today at a minimum. I have been pleased that he's been getting, the starting run as well.
I almost think at this point, with the deficiencies defensively from both midfield and the defense, I think we need to almost go to a double pivot midfielder situation with, whether it's Schallenberg and Templeman or whomever, and then bring in Ouedraogo as a more attacking type midfielder. So that way he can be there. He's there for bringing the transition and bringing the drives into the box and spreading it out. Templeman seems to do better when he doesn't have to be overly reliant on the offensive ball, especially when Seguin isn't doing anything. So I'd like to see that a little bit more. I mean, like I said, it depends on how you want to play him, but you have to understand that he is young. He's 17. And so I think if you shore up the defense with two holding midfielders, it'll help the defense some. But, we talked about this in the pod probably all season long. But Baumgartel decided to talk about it on an interview. And basically he said, let me find the words here. He says, this is where he apologized. Let me find the words. Here we go. He says, it can't go on like this, is what he's telling. I think it was Sky is who he was talking to. So he's like, where is the quote start? He goes, okay, this is the coach's philosophy. He tells us that's why we do this as a team. But it's clear if you watch the first 20 or 30 minutes, it's brutally difficult when an opponent does it well. If you're behind on one-on-one, that's obviously risky, and it's going to be so difficult for us to get strong teams against St. Pauli or Magdeburg. But we can't complain when it's 3-0 and it's 30 minutes down, right? It's like this. We can't go on like this. This is too much. Says we're constantly exchanging ideas, in the back room, trying to adjust things, but it always comes back to the same thing, back whatever the coach wants. And in the first 30 minutes, you can't catch up when you're down 2 or 3 goals. Even if we can score goals, 15 goals is conceded in 7 games. That's brutal. It can't go on. And obviously, it drew the ire of the management, in particular one Thomas Rice. And eventually what we saw, I think a day later, or even hours later, was Baumgartel come out and saying, hey, what I triggered with my statement was not my intention. That should not happen to a player with my experience. And that's why I asked Thomas Rice and Andre Henkelman to apologize, and I'm very happy that they accepted it. I know that now I am challenged. Basically what came out of that, Jack, is that he received a suspension. They didn't quite say suspension, but he's with the U23s right now. He's definitely getting fined. But he spoke the truth. I mean, it's what we've been saying all season long on here, Jack. It's maybe he's the only one listening to our podcast. I don't know, but what are your thoughts? I mean, there's obviously some comments on our Discord about it, but what are your thoughts on this?
I don't think he would. So first of all, I'll say this. I think as far as what could have been said, what he ultimately said was fairly mild.
Yeah,
I don't think it was that aggressive. And I think it was phrased sort of ambiguously enough, like in terms of like, still sharing some responsibility for it and also kind of admitting that he can't really execute the game plan, which, could be partially, but you know what I mean? Like, I think it could have been much more scorched earth if he wanted it to be.
Sure.
I don't think he would have said that if he was alone and feeling that way. I think that's probably somebody having the confidence to say that because they know that there is a base of support for that opinion amongst portions of the team. I know that's what I was speaking to at the beginning, is that it does seem like it's a fractured locker room at the moment, where there are Thomas Rice supporters and there are, a faction that is questioning at a minimum questioning things, if not, outright, wishing for a change up top. But so I guess my question is, how do you feel about the response from Schalke? Part of me doesn't like it, and then part of me is like, well, if they're actually worried about the locker room, maybe this is kind of a strong show that immediately tries to nip this action in the bud by actually kind of coming out with kind of like a punishment for him that's like public, as opposed to just kind of dealing with it internally. But I don't know. I'm conflicted about it. How do you feel?
I too am conflicted because, one, you don't want those comments. You don't want people to start saying whatever the hell they want to say in the locker room, right? You do kind of want to nip it in the butt. However, it does show that maybe there is a fracture. Maybe Rice is, as someone said in the Discord, is being triggered by these, and he's showing his frustrations by lashing out at the player as he did. And also, it goes against the team's morale when Heckelman comes in and says, we agree 100% with Rice. Now, what are they going to say? Their hands are kind of tied, right? Are they going to come out and say, "Oh, Rice is wrong"? No, they're not going to say that. So that by saying what Andreas Heckelman said, the team's morale's got to go down, because if there is this group of players who do feel the same way, and you got to imagine they do, it just means like the disconnect is even greater there, right? And we're in a relegation spot at the moment, which is unbelievable. But do I think his head's on a chopping block right now? No. But I think if we see a couple more performances here in the next coming weeks, we got obviously Paderborn coming up this Friday, followed by Hertha Berlin, which is going to be a big one for us. And then after that, it's going to be Karlsruhe. I mean, so within these next 3 games, we see continued, ineptitude on the defensive side of the ball. I could see where if we're languishing in a relegation spot, they're just going to pull the trigger early. It would look bad on management. I mean, I don't get this, because like, what drives me crazy is that this team was so good defensively under Rice last year, and it's for whatever reason this year they can't figure it out. And I don't know if they want to play. Maybe manager said, "Hey, let's play attractive, scoring soccer."
To be fair, personnel is part of that. Although you would expect with the drop in quality to Division 2 that it would have been this much of a drop off. But I feel you.
Yeah, 100%. Says there's a poll on Twitter from Schalke journalists, and 90% of the fans thought the punishment was BS. I mean, yeah. I mean, I definitely thought a fine should have been something, right? But send it to the U23s is trying to send a clear message to the team. And
I think Ryan's comment in the chat from Twitch kind of summarizes how I most closely feel, which is that like I understand the potential logic of it from like a organizational standpoint. Although I do question if it is the right logic play anyway. And yeah, just something about it feels wrong, because I don't think it was that harsh of a statement. And I think the players probably have a right to be frustrated at the moment. And I don't know, I think it almost creates a bigger scene than it needed to. If he had made those comments and no one did anything about it, I don't think there's going to be that much reporting on those comments.
Yeah.
Even a couple days later, I think we're talking about it for longer than we probably would have if that had just been something that was said in the post game and then left that way. You know what I mean? But that's just me.
What I would have liked to seen done or seen happen, and I say it's, and not only it happens in sports, but I think also in work, just in work life in general, is like, when you got issues like that, you do it behind closed doors. You don't do it in front of the open where everybody in the public, so everybody can, comment on it. If there was an issue, Baumgartner should have spoken up, but do it in the locker room. Don't do it in front of the media. Don't do it to Sky or whoever the hell he spoke to. That way, and if they're going to have the quarrels, there's a quarrel behind the scenes, and maybe nobody gets punished at that point, right? It's just like he spoke of a team. If one of the team policies is you don't talk bad about the team in public, then I can see why they would have suspended him and fined him. It's a tricky situation, and at this point, the team, or more so Rice and the management, are walking on eggshells now because they have to, especially his management team, with his assistant coaches, they're gonna have to get it right here, especially defensively going forward. Maybe we have to employ similar tactics to St. Pauli, meaning defense first and then try to score goals. I think we can score goals with this team, but we need to do better, shore up the ball defensively, and then work on our transition game because our midfield seems non-existent at the point. It's not helping things. So it's a difficult one for me. But we have some players getting healthy now, so maybe that'll help. Obviously, it doesn't help when we hear rumors that Fairman's, not feeling great as a backup role. From the locker room chatter that we hear, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But just something doesn't seem right with the players at the moment, and it kind of reared its head.
No, I mean, I think Baumgartl was expressing like this is a high risk way to set up the team.
Yeah, it's 100%
he's
true.
not wrong because we have the second worst defensive record in the league next to like Onisbrook at the moment. What do we conceded? 15 goals now. I mean, he's not incorrect.
Correct.
So yeah, it's a tough one for me. Also, keep in mind, I'm also a Bears fan, so
I'm a Commanders fan.
I'm not doing well at the moment.
Me neither.
It's not fun times for your boy. And we got a Jets fan in the house too. Yeah, I feel you.
Sorry, Ryan.
Anyway, sorry, we just crossed over to NFL there for a second. Sorry to the actual German football fans. Yeah. But like I said, second half, I mean, I don't understand why it takes a halftime speech for Rice to get the team under control because, was commented in the chat, like the first 30 minutes have been atrocious, multiple times this season, two consecutive games in a row now. And then second half, we come out, we look much better overall. I'm not saying we look, amazing, but where is that and why is that not achievable from the get-go? They supposedly train well all week. They're optimistic. They're talking about what they need to do, and then they get on the pitch and they just look completely out of sorts. As initially at least, it's very strange.
Yeah, I mean, like Lars said, we had this tactic against Magdeburg, and granted, Magdeburg, they give up a lot of goals, but they score a lot of goals. They're very good offensively, and they tried the same thing against St. Pauli. It's not like St. Pauli scoring goals for fun this year, like you mentioned, but they have talent on their team. They certainly have talent on their team. You don't want to give a team that is good, that's playing in front of their home crowd, which is awesome, and give me any kind of chance to flourish. And we certainly did that. And I think we've seen this multiple times this year where we started poorly. There's key issues defensively, and we haven't figured any of that out, which personnel has got to be it, one of the main issues, but also the tactics. Yeah, your personnel sucks. I assume that's what Rice is thinking, but you need to adjust your game plan to make up for that issue, for those deficiencies, right? Well, that's load the midfield, right? Play maybe three in the back with five in the middle to kind of clog that midfield to kind of slow things down. Something than what they're doing because they're giving away too many shots, way too many opportunities. Our goalkeepers all season long have had to make save after save. It wasn't quite 9 saves like Mueller had to make against Hamburg, but it's close.
Yeah, it's going to be less sustainable now that we don't have either of those guys too, because now we're working with Lager, and if Lager goes down or whatever, plays poorly, Harrington or whatever. So, that sort of bend, but hope the goalkeeper stops you from breaking is not going to be viable.
Yeah, and I kind of said I'm losing patience with Templeman, but even prior to this game, and the comments had nothing to do with it. I'm losing patience with Baumgartl, honestly, too. I kind of want to see Kalash. We did see him for a couple minutes, and the ball unfortunately went off of him at the end. You can't really blame him for that, but the defensive pairing isn't working at the moment, and maybe it is pure tactics. Who knows? I don't know. But something's got to change, and we can't just keep doing the same thing over and over every week and expect the results to change. That's madness. That's the pure definition of madness, right? So, we'll see what happens because we got a quick turnaround here coming this Friday against a Paderborn team we have to beat because look at the standings here. Paderborn currently sit in 15th place, so they're direct rivals. We have to win this.
Yeah, I agree. Important game early in the season.
It is. Let me show some of the other results because we are in 16th place for a reason, and that's based off some of the results that we saw this weekend. There we go. So Hamburg lost, which is one of the first losses of the season. Surprising loss to Osnabrück. Magdeburg drew Paderborn. So obviously, maybe Paderborn has a good defense. Who knows? Elversberg beat Wiesbaden. Greuther Fürth won despite having a red card against Karlsruhe. Braunschweig tied Nuremberg. Obviously, we know our score. Holstein Kiel lost to Hertha Berlin. Hertha Berlin got a win, but there's a red card to help with that. And then Kaiserslautern beat Hansa Rostock 3-1. So, yeah, with all those results happening, we are way down in the relegation spot, which is traumatizing to say the least. Obviously, I thought these two teams would be down here, even Wiesbaden to an extent and Greuther Fürth, but certainly not us. And yeah, we don't change around in the next 3 games.
Paderborn and us, it's like the hot ones meme where it's like, look at us. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Good old Paul Rudd. But there we are.
Look at us. Absolutely. Dusseldorf at the top. Look at that. St. Pauli, Hamburg at the top with Kaiserslautern. It's nice to see Kaiserslautern up there, but not at our expense. I think some of these. Certainly, of these top 6 teams, I would say, certainly Magdeburg, Hamburg, and St. Pauli should be in there, even Holstein Kiel. But some of the other ones are nice surprises, and I think they will drop off. I don't expect Dusseldorf to hold on to this kind of form, either Kaiserslautern or Hanover. But we'll see, right? I mean, Hertha Berlin's got somehow they're ahead of us now on points, which is ridiculous. But yeah, it's not looking good. Hopefully, we can figure it out here soon. International break's coming up very, very soon, so. It'd be nice to get some string of results before we get to that point there, Jack. Because I think if it continues to spiral, we could be looking at a new manager here.
I miss Marius Bolter.
Me too. I do too. Hey, but speaking of that, not quite Marius Bolter. We do have some personnel news. Ferriman, Drexler, Tarota, and Cisse are all working individually in practice now. Karaman is completing parts of team training, which is good. Didn't think we are going to see him for a long time. And Lastman has been able to return to full training now. So, I mean, once we get Lastman back, Karaman back, it would be nice. Obviously, having Drexler in the midfield.
Now we're cooking with gasoline.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But again, it's a midfield that's going to have to figure it out, I think. We're not going to get better until midfield gets better. And maybe that, I don't know. Rice and company have to figure something out. Well, yeah, I don't know, man. So it's going to be an interesting season here, but let's see what we can do here the next time. I miss Jensen Krause every day. Yeah, no, for sure.
God, Tom Krause was so good. I love him.
He was. I know, me too. We're only 7 points off the top of the table. Yeah, that's true. But we're below Hertha Berlin. So anyway. Anything else you want to talk about, or get out of here?
Nah, let's get out of here.
With our tail between our legs, right? Game is this Friday, 12:30 Eastern time, 11:30 Jack time in Chicagoland. It's not going to be televised. This last game was televised on ESPN Plus for those in the States. We'll have to find it by hook or by crook this Friday. So I'll see if I can get the game going or not. Depends on how things shape up at work. But anyway, Jack, where can our followers find you on social media?
At JMangan, JMMANGAN on Twitter.
Prime season, mid-season form there. Shout out to everyone on the Discord and everyone and listening in the chat, listening on to this podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page. Subscribe, like, leave comments. Would be much appreciated. You could follow me at R_KHARMAN, but more importantly, follow Schalke America everywhere on social media. Give us a shout. And again, if you're not in the Discord, jump in there. Some good people there. We saw Eric Zagerman on here last week. Shout out to him for joining us on episode 200. We'll try to do some more things with our Discord peeps here in the future here. And we're also trying to get some more guests on here. I saw Matthew Carrigan with a nice comment previewing the game to Schalke and St. Pauli. So it'd be good to catch up with him and Ava, who we haven't talked to in a while, actually. So anyway, let's get out of here, Jack, and let's just try to get a result this weekend.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. Between Schalke and our football teams, it's been fun. So, all right, we'll catch you guys soon. Glück auf.